I work at Entrepreneur Libraries, and with us today, of course, we have Polly, our guest of honour, and Jacinta, who's my co-host, and she's at our Hub Library. And we'll be asking Polly a series of questions today. And if you've got any questions that you would like to ask of Polly, if you pop them in the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen, Jacinta will ask them at the end. And if you can't see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, just click on the mouse and move it around and it pops up at the bottom. Everyone's screen is slightly different these days, so hopefully that works. And there's a chat option there as well. So I always forget to mention, you can put Polly's book on hold at or any library in South Australia. You can come in person, you can do it over the phone, or you can hop online and do it online as well. So there's lots of options to have a read of Polly's book. And also, if you are near Glenelg, there is a bookshop down there called Dimmock's Glenelg, and we like to recommend you purchase the book through them as well. They've been very helpful in having all of our authors' books in their store. And it's a lovely day out down there too with the beach. So pop down to Glenelg if you're in South Australia, and if you're not, then you can probably get online and order it from most places. So thank you. Great to be here. So my first question for you, Polly, is looks like you've had a very interesting life. You've lived in many cities, so that sounds quite amazing to someone that's living in South Australia. So what made you want to write a book and be a published author?
I think I'd always wanted to write. It was probably one of the fantasies that I had as a young child. You know, when you sort of ask kids what they want to be, and my daughter at the moment really wants to be a vet and all that sort of stuff. I always wanted to be a writer, probably because I'm rubbish at science, so being a vet was never going to be an option. But so I always wanted to write, and after I finished university, I did a history degree at university, and then I got into journalism. And I worked at a soap opera magazine, so it's particularly exciting for me to be in Australia now, because I grew up on Home and Away and Neighbours, which is obviously really English and really embarrassing, but I wrote about soaps, and then I moved on to a newspaper. But I'd always had this kind of burning passion to write a book, but just never the patience to actually sit down and do it. I told a lot of people I was going to write a book before I actually did, which was quite embarrassing, because then my husband told all his colleagues, and every time I met them, they'd say, "Oh, how's the book going?" And I was like, "I haven't even started it." But eventually my husband, he got made redundant, and the job that this was when I was living in London, and the job that he got afterwards was based in Algeria every other month, a bit like the sort of British version of FIFO. And I thought, if I don't do it now, I mean, I've got all of these evenings. I mean, my toddler was in bed by sort of 6 and obviously couldn't be left. So I had sort of yawning stretches of time, and I didn't have Netflix at the time. So I thought, now's the time. So I did an online course for a few months, and that really helped me with the structure. And yeah, I just started writing.
It's very interesting that all of the authors we've spoken to over the course of the last year, a lot of them have said they've done a writing course, which you obviously were a journalist as well, so you've done a lot of writing in your time and study. So what made the writing course really help you get started?
I think what a lot of people say, as you say, they're quite popular, these courses, and I've actually done a couple now, and I think what a lot of people say, and I agree with them, it's the feedback that you get, and you don't just get the feedback from the tutor who's running the course, but obviously there'll be maybe half a dozen or a dozen other people on. So part of the courses that I've done, a lot of it was reading other people's work and commenting and that sort of stuff. So that gives you the double bonus of people are responding to what you've written, and you know if you're hitting the mark or not. And you're also seeing what other people are doing and seeing what they're doing well, and sort of it gives you maybe a better understanding of what's not working and what is working. And it's also, it can just be quite a nice way to make writer friends. I mean, I sort of felt I had wanted to be a writer, but nobody that I knew wrote or wanted to be a writer. So it felt quite, in some ways that made it more daunting and more unlikely. It seemed like more of an impossible dream because I wasn't surrounded by writers. So then connecting with other people doing the same thing, I think really gave my kind of confidence a boost and a drive to do it.
What made you want to write a book, like a crime book?
That's such a big question. Well, I actually, the first course that I did, I had started writing something completely different. It was a historical fiction. It was going to be a World War II romance set in Sri Lanka. And I had this sort of vision that it would be, I don't know, sort of Richard Flanagan-esque, and it was going to be this great novel and so lyrical and all this sort of stuff. And it just turns out I just can't write like that. It was a real slog. Every time I sort of was trying to write, it just felt really laboured and forced. But I did plug away on it for about a year. And then I spoke to someone, a writer friend that I'd made, and I sort of said, I'm just really struggling and I'm entering all these competitions and going nowhere. And should it be this hard? And she said, why don't you take a break from it and just write something completely different. Just give yourself a bit of a palate cleanser and then you can go back to it. And I thought, okay, fine, yeah, I will. And I'd had this toxic friendship as a teenager into my 20s, and it had quite a profound effect on me. And it was a really intense friendship, you know, the sort of friendships where you have your songs and your jokes and all that sort of stuff. And I just had this idea that maybe I'd write something a bit like that. And I didn't even know what I was going to do with it, but it just came so much more easily. So in the end, the palate cleanser became the main course. I never went back to the historical fiction.
That's good news for us because it's a great story. So, which leads me, because you sort of mentioned it a bit there, but in your book you have lots of little memories all throughout the book. How did you bring all them moments together? Because that really gives the book depth. So when you're looking at the final scenes, it's that shared memory of everything that's happened. You've sort of interwoven it into the book really well. So how did you come up with the memories, or are they based on some of your own from your own friendship? Now you've said that, I thought, well, maybe that's the key. Yeah, because they seem very realistic to some of them friendships I know can be like that.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually. I've had so many people say to me since the book's been published, like, oh, I've got an Izzy, or I had a friendship like this, and it seems to have struck a chord. So yes, spoiler alert, some of the memories in there are, I mean, disguised perhaps so that I can't get sued. But there are a couple of things in the book that genuinely did happen. And then I guess the characters felt so strong to me, because although the book is inspired by the relationship, that the people are very different. I hope I'm not as needy as Beck, and my Izzy wasn't, sadly for her, not quite as glamorous. So they are disguised, but the moments did happen. But because I then knew the characters so well, it kind of made sense to me. I could immediately see other things that they might do to each other that we hadn't done to each other.
Did you, when you were writing the book, did the moments just pop into your head and you wrote them, or did you sort of have a plan? Like, did you plan them all and then use certain ones at certain times for your book?
Ooh, that's a good question. I did. Yeah, I'm not very good with technology, as you guys know, but I did manage to discover the notes function in my phone. So a couple of times I would be walking the dog or going for a jog or something like that, and I would suddenly think, bing, I've got to. But the book itself was planned. I don't think I've got the confidence to be, they call them pantsers, that they fly by the seat of their pants and just write what comes. I needed to know where I was going. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I did need to know where I was going.
Yeah, that would be me too. Your book, I know, won a writing prize. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It did. I was living in the Emirates at the time. I was living in Dubai, and it won the Monte Grappa competition there, which was part of the Emirates Literature Festival. And it was the you submitted, I think it was about 2,000 words of your novel, and it was judged by a literary agent and a panel from the Emirates Literature Foundation. And yeah, I won, which was amazing. What I would say, full disclosure, I had entered it the previous 2 years with my laboured historical fiction and gone nowhere. So I hope that might inspire some other people. I mean, sometimes you see or you hear authors and it seems like they're overnight and they say, oh, I just started writing and then I won a competition. And then this was very much third time lucky. I had plugged away and I was really lucky in that third year entering this competition with this book, completely different from the first 2 entries. It was picked, although at the point that I entered it, the book did not have a murder in it. So it was obviously not called My Best Friend's Murder. And I got a lot of feedback from the judges about maybe making it more thrillery, and this was the result.
Oh, excellent. Did you, because you obviously have this published through Simon & Schuster, did you have to approach many publishers before they agreed to publish this book?
Well, I went through an agent. So after I won the competition, it was great because it meant that when I was then felt I was ready to approach agents in London, I was able to say, it won this competition. And I think that probably helped maybe get it off a slush pile. It had obviously proved that somebody somewhere who wasn't me or related to me had read and enjoyed it. So I signed with a London agent and she submitted it to about 15 publishers. And 3 of them really liked it, which apparently is, you're not going to please everyone. And we got offers from 2 of them. And I was actually in London at the time because I had checkered past, but I was still living in Dubai, but I knew I was moving back to Australia, which I was thrilled about. But so I flew to London to sort of say goodbye to my family who were still in London, although obviously I wasn't living there. I knew that Australia was a lot further away than London and clearly hadn't anticipated the pandemic, but did think it would be harder to get back. So while I was in London, I was able to meet the 2 publishing companies who wanted to publish the book. And that was a really lovely experience to speak to people who understood the characters. And then Simon & Schuster were very passionate, so we went with them.
Oh, excellent. In your book, you use Beck's memories a lot. So Beck is one of the main characters. You use her memories rather than flashbacks, which me and Jacinta were discussing that earlier, and we thought that was quite clever because with memories, they can be distorted, whereas flashbacks can't. So was that an intentional ploy?
No, but now you've said it, that's very, you're exactly right. And I think one of the sort of things about the book is by the time you get to the end, obviously it's entirely from Beck's point of view. And by the end, you do perhaps realize that there is maybe another point of view there and that we are all giving a very biased story as we are in our memories. And it was nice to write the memories specifically from her point of view. And I wanted them to sort of slot into the story rather than do flashbacks. But the book that I'm editing at the moment, my second book, is told in a dual timeline. So it actually goes now, then, every other chapter is a total flashback. So it's been a completely different experience.
Do you think down the track you would consider doing the book over again from Izzy's point of view? Because I know
that would be so fun.
Some authors have done that recently. I've read a few. Where they've done that.
Good idea.
Yeah, and I've read them, and when I've picked them up, I thought, it's going to be so boring reading this book, so I know the story, but it's so totally different. So it's a cool idea.
No, I love that idea, especially because they obviously are at loggerheads with each other, and so their points of view are extremely different. And I know that a lot of people don't. A lot of my readers don't really like Izzy. They feel that she's sort of this ice queen and that she's a bit of a toxic friend and all that sort of stuff. I actually do have a sort of special spot and a bit of affection for her, possibly because I see her sort of trying to balance everything, motherhood and being a wife and having a job and all that sort of stuff. And I've experienced some of those trials myself, or sadly not in a multi-million-pound townhouse in leafy Clapham. But no, I think it would be a really good idea to do it from Izzy's point of view. I will make a note.
Excellent. Well, that is the end of my questions. So I'm going to hand over to Jacinta now, and she's going to ask any audience questions.
Great.
Thanks, Angela. Got a few questions from the audience here. We've got one from Travis, just to start off with. And he is wanting to know, do you plan your books or do you allow it to grow?
Oh, good question. I think it's probably both. I do like to, I'm trying to think if I'm at my desk here, so I'm trying to think if I've got something that with my plan. What I do is I have the general idea, the theme. So in this, I knew I wanted to discuss toxic friendships and relationships. I like to start with a prologue, an inciting event, something sort of gripping that hopefully will bring the reader straight in. And then I like to know what the end is. And then it's sort of plotting how I get there, but quite generally. I do actually have this, everyone will see how terrible my technology is, but I have this on my desk, which I stick to, and it talks about sort of this arc of trying to increase the tension and bring it up and then bring it back down. So every so often I'll look at that and think, oh, where am I supposed to be? And have I got enough tension, and have I got enough suspense? Does that help? I hope so.
That's a great answer. I was also wondering as well, what is your process for not only like writing the book and writing the story and developing the story, but also for an intensifying thriller? Is that the sort of similar to the chart you were just showing, or do you have any other processes for sort of slowly building things up, or anything else that you sort of use in your aid when you're writing?
Ooh, I do look at the chart a lot. I've read quite a few books because initially, as I said, when I won the competition, there wasn't a murder in it. It was not maybe intended to be a thriller. It was maybe more of a sort of, I don't know, a woman's fiction. And so getting into that thriller mindset was something that I didn't know how to approach to start with. So I read a really good book called Save the Cat, which talks about how one of the first things that you've got to do is try and make your character likable and identifiable. And that's called Save the Cat. You can have this horrible person who's doing terrible things, but then, a cat might cross their path and they'll save it, and it sort of instantly endears them. So try and sort of think about what I can do to make the characters a bit more identifiable at the beginning. That's one of the things I do, but no, I think it probably is just referring to the chart.
Speaking of the characters, you just mentioned before that you have a soft spot for Izzy. Do you have a favourite character in the book?
I do love them all, which I never believed when I heard other authors speak, and they would speak about these characters, then, these truly loathsome individuals, and say that they love them. I thought, really? But I do like them all. And also, I can see their flaws and their weaknesses. Probably my favourite character, other than the dog, who is entirely blameless and probably the only blameless character. I really like Rob, who is Beck's brother. I've got 2 older brothers, and I had a lot of fun writing their relationship because I grew up being sort of squashed and teased and laughed at, and sort of that camaraderie that comes with a sibling. So Rob is probably my favourite character.
Oh, good answer. I really enjoyed, I found Beck quite relatable. And I thought you did a great job with Tilly too. Was she based on elements of your daughter?
Oh, almost entirely, yes.
Well, she's a very sweet character who went through a lot. We've also got another question from Travis again, just asking, how do you introduce flashbacks?
Ooh, this is a really good question, and it's something that I've struggled with and tried to do a lot of reading about, because I think the whole sort of point is to try and not make them clunky, and that's you have all this information that's so great to put in a flashback, and it explains so much, but to try and introduce them naturally can be a challenge. I think what I try and do is have something in the current scene that relates to the flashback. So either, I don't know, just off the top of my head, maybe a smell. The character smells something and it takes them right back to the flashback, or they see something, or a smashed glass reminds them of something. There's a flashback, without giving too much away, in the story in My Best Friend's Murder. There's at a funeral in the present tense, it reminds Beck of the funeral of her own mother, who had died when she was a teenager. And so things like that, if I can just find the connection between what's going on in the current and the flashback, then that sort of helps me to introduce them.
Oh, very good. Now, without giving any spoilers away, at what point did you decide who done it?
Oh, well, this is such a good question, because I decided who done it several times, and each time was a different person who done it. So actually really right at the 11th hour, so my agent had read it, and I asked some friends who love books and who I thought would give me quite an honest, balanced assessment. They'd all read it, and the agent was just about to send it off, and she said, have you considered maybe that this person could do it instead of this person? And it was such a bolt from the blue, and I actually totally hadn't considered that at all. And she said, look, you don't have to go with it. And I said, look, can I actually go away and think about this? Because I've worked on this for a year, and I've had this in my mind and that in my mind. And I did, and I went away and sat on it. And I thought, actually, the fact that it's come so out of left field could be a really nice twist. But obviously I do then have to go back and make sure that it's not quite so out of left field. I mean, I really teetering on the edge, so I have to be really careful not to give any spoilers. The character who done it had a different name all the way through the first draft. And then when I decided that they, very careful to use the pronoun they, were the one who done it, I actually went back and changed the name, because I felt that the character, to have that sort of greater depth and the ability to do what they did, the first name didn't suit them. So I changed their name and then put a few other sort of little pieces in. So yeah, that was quite a fun thing, but it was very different.
Oh, that's very interesting. I've read the book all the way through and I quite enjoyed it. So I'm like, speculating for us. Now, just got another question come through. Let me just get to that one. All right, so when you have multiple characters, how do you keep track of all the different characters? What processes do you have for that?
What process do I have? I generally, I'll have a notebook. That's how I start, even before I've started the planning. Even before I've sort of started the chapter plan. I have a notebook like this. This one helpfully says notes on it, just in case I forget that it's a notebook. And I'll write the names of the characters and then just little bits about them. I can see a note coming up from someone saying they use a spreadsheet. I have tried to use a spreadsheet, but Excel is sort of right at the edge of my technological abilities. So I do stick to Word, and so I'll write bits about them, and I don't go fully into it. I know that some people have songs that they think that character would like and all that sort of stuff. I don't do that, but I do, and then I'll try and create a picture in my mind, and then that sort of helps solidify them. But also none of my books have, well, as far as I'm aware, maybe I'm biased, I don't think they have that many characters. So it's not too difficult for me. I know some books have multiple characters.
Oh, very good. Now, what do you find is the most difficult part of writing for yourself?
Oh, I think, without being a cop-out answer, I almost think that whatever I'm doing at that moment is the most difficult bit. When I'm writing a first draft, I think, oh God, the first draft's so difficult. I can't wait till it's done and I can move on to the second draft. And then when I'm doing the second draft, I think, oh, the first draft's so freeing. I wish I could go back and do that. Second draft's so difficult. But possibly, I think the most difficult, I love writing probably about the first 5,000 words. That seems to fly, and it's so fun and it's so full of potential. And I love writing the end. You're sort of tearing through and you hope that you've got all of the bits in play that you wanted. Sometimes I can find the middle a bit sticky.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah, that's good. And so what do you have any tips yourself for, it sounds like there might be a few people on here who are interested in writing. So any tips on writing or on getting published?
I think my tip on getting published is a cliche one, but it is a cliche for a reason. And that is don't give up and get good at rejection, I suppose. I think being a journalist helped me from the perspective of I was used to people changing my work and things not being published and things just changing. Even if you have this starry ascent and your first book gets picked up in a multi-million-dollar auction, all that sort of stuff, at some point someone won't like it. It must be absolutely kind of clinically impossible for everyone to like your book and everyone to want it. So I suppose trying to get used to rejection at the beginning because it will come at the end, no matter how successful you are, is probably one of my best tips. And by the way to do that is not to give up. And I was reaching a point when I started writing My Best Friend's Murder. I was quite depressed is probably a bit strong, but I was downhearted. I'd been plugging away at this book and I just couldn't get anywhere with it. And I'd entered competition after competition. And I just thought maybe I should just be giving this all up and actually doing something more productive. And I didn't give up, and I did try. And I did keep going, and it worked. So that's probably my publishing tip. Don't give up. My writing tip is try and take inspiration from what's around you. Make use of your Apple Notes. I think sort of seeing things, you often see, I don't know, people behaving strangely in the most ordinary of ways, or a character in a supermarket, somebody wearing a stupid hat or something. And I just love these kind of what if scenarios. And I think there are so many around us that they are kind of great fodder for ideas.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Now, how long did it take you to plot and write and to go through the process of writing My Best Friend's Murder?
So I started it in September, I think, and I was working as a teaching assistant at the time, so I didn't have all data. I was fitting it around that and family responsibilities. I submitted it into the competition at the end of January, and then I thought, well, I won't write anymore just in case it wins. And then I'll have to change everything. So then I had a little break till March. It did win, which was amazing. And then they said, it's great, but you need to rewrite almost all of it. So I was back to the drawing board. And then I felt so inspired, and I'd had so much great feedback from them that I did actually motor through and finish it, I think, at the end of July. And then took a break from it, started submitting to Ages in September. So probably a year from
fantastic
starting it to then submitting it.
Yeah, from start to finish of the book. Oh, lovely. What about your own favourites? Do you have any favourite authors or favourite books at the moment? We love hearing about other books working in a library.
There's an author that I really love called, I thought she was called Githa Lodge, and I heard a podcast with her the other day, and it's pronounced Githa Lodge. She writes police procedurals. She's written 3, and I just love the way she writes, because I love that I'm reading it desperate to find out who done it, but I'm also fascinated by the relationships between the recurring characters. She's got a really good lead detective, and then there's 2 people in the team that I'm dying. There's been 3 books, and I'm dying for them to realize that they're in love with each other, and they haven't realized it yet. I have, but they haven't got there. So I like her. There's a book I just read called The Last Thing to Burn by Will Dean, which has been in quite a lot of places, and I really liked that. And like the rest of the world, I am a Jane Harper and Leanne Moriarty fan. They sort of tick both my boxes of the kind of, I love the relationships and the sort of interactions that Leanne Moriarty captures so beautifully, and I think the landscape that Jane Harper draws on and her plotting is fantastic.
You have very good taste. Now, we've got another question come through, just asking, have you thought about ebooks?
Oh, yes, I think about ebooks all the time, because my Best Friend's Murder is currently only out in ebook in the UK. Sorry, mind blank there. And it's not being released there until July in paperback. Australia brilliantly seems to get books before we do in the UK. So I'll read about a book in the UK papers that's sort of not due out and think, oh, I can't wait to get that. Then I'll go into Dimmocks and it's there already. Yes. So I do think about ebooks. I do have a Kindle and I read on it, but it's currently, I don't know what's wrong with it. It drained itself of battery and it's now been plugged in for about 2 weeks and has not recovered. And I probably do, if I had to pick between paperback or ebook, I do prefer the satisfaction of closing the book and it being finished.
Yes, no, I'm hearing you there. Now, you mentioned that you're working on your next book and you've got some more flashbacks in there in the now and the then. Have you got anything else you can tease about your new book?
Oh yes, I'd love to tell you about it. So it's working title. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. Maybe it will change down the line, but it's working title. It's always been called in my head The Reunion, and it is the story of a woman who goes back to her 15-year university reunion, and something terrible happened to her at the university. And during the course of the flashbacks, we find out what that was. She hasn't been back since, and she goes back to this reunion determined that she's going to get her revenge on the people that she holds responsible for that thing that happened, that went on to pretty much ruin her life. She has not become the rising star that she hoped and thought she would, and she's gone back to settle old scores. So that's that one.
Oh, it sounds fantastic. Any idea of when that will be, when we'll be seeing that on the shelves?
I think it's next year. I've had all my edits back from the editor, so I'm working through those at the moment. So yeah, and then I think we're hoping that if we get a reprint of My Best Friend's Murder, then the first couple of chapters of the reunion will be in the back for curious souls. So hopefully that will happen, I guess, maybe I was going to say the summer, because June and July still feels like summer for me because I'm on the other hemisphere, but in the winter here, hopefully there might be some spoilers coming out about the reunion.
Fantastic, sounds good. Now, going back to the ebook question, we've also had someone else ask, so this is from Ro, and they're asking, I love audiobooks. Are you going to release on audio?
Oh yes, it's on audio, which is brilliant. And a few of my friends back in the UK have been listening to it on audio. So I presume that you can just get it on audio on Amazon and that sort of thing. There's a really brilliant narrator whose name is, I think, Jane Collingwood, and she does a really good job. And I was sent a sample. The way that it works, or the way that it worked for me, was the publisher said, look, we think this person's really great, but if you don't like her, we'll find someone else. So I had all this power. It's really exciting, but she did a really good job. And I know that she's read quite a few of these sort of thrillery types, so she knows exactly what she's doing. So
that's fantastic. It's great hearing about the process for all of that. Now, we'll just take a few more questions. So if anyone has any other burning questions they've got for Polly, please leave those in either the chat or the Q&A. But I've got another question here for you. So if you weren't an author, what do you think you would be doing?
Ooh, God, I love that question. How long have you got? No, I think I would love to, in a dream world, maybe I'd have done law. But then I think it's easy for me to say that, never having had to sort of trawl through legal texts and that sort of stuff. But I do, having grown up on films like The Firm and all of these sort of legal dramas, John Grisham, there's a part of me that would like to have been an Ally McBeal type lawyer. But no, I did, other than that, I did always want to do the writing thing. I wanted to be a journalist, and then from there I became a novelist. So I have been lucky in terms of being able to do that.
Oh, fantastic. It's wonderful that it's something which you enjoy and you've been able to continue and get into. We can't wait to see what you write next. So thank you so much for joining us today, Polly. It's been lovely interviewing you and hearing from you. And also thank you to the audience for listening in, for joining, and for sharing your questions with Polly as well.
Yeah, it's been excellent.
I've had a really great time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to interview me, and everyone taking the time to tune in. It means a lot as a debut author to have that kind of support, and to talk about the characters who've been so real in my head for so long, and now maybe real in other people's heads too.
Definitely.
It's been fabulous hearing from you. And if anyone listening in today hasn't read My Best Friend's Murder, blending into my background here, I'll put it in front of me, there we are. If anyone hasn't read My Best Friend's Murder, just give your local library a call up. Friendly staff there will be able to help you place a hold on it. Otherwise, you can go online and place a hold on the book to read a copy as well. Also, we have got more online author talks coming up. So we'll be interviewing Deborah Rodriguez as well as Mary Lee coming up shortly. So you'll be able to find all our upcoming author talks and other events at the libraries on our Onkaparinga Libraries Eventbrite page, and also on our Onkaparinga Libraries Facebook page. Thank you so much again, Polly. It's been wonderful speaking with you, and thank you to Angela for hosting.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed myself. Have a lovely weekend, everyone.
Thank you. We did as well.
Thank you, and all the best for your future works.
Oh, thank you. Take care.
Bye.